On my daughter's wedding day, I woke up bald, my dress ruined, all to ensure I wouldn't outshine her fiancé's mother. They drugged me. They thought I wouldn't fight back. I simply smiled. Little did they know, their perfect day was about to become my masterpiece of justice. Like, share, and tell me where you're listening from. The morning sun, usually a comforting embrace, felt like a cruel spotlight as I slowly surfaced from a drugged slumber. The first thing I noticed wasn't the bird song, nor the gentle light filtering through the curtains, but an acute, shocking chill on my scalp. My hand instinctively flew to my head, expecting to feel the familiar cascade of my thick, silver-streaked hair. Instead, my fingers met smooth, cool skin. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the lingering fog of sleep. My hair, my beautiful, carefully styled hair, was gone. Completely. Shaved to the skin. I shot upright in bed, my breath catching in my throat. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Today was Chloe's wedding day. The day my only daughter was supposed to marry Ethan Sterling. I was supposed to be there, radiant and proud. My navy blue silk gown, a testament to understated elegance. My gaze swept frantically around the room, searching for a mirror, for some explanation for this horror. My eyes fell upon the exquisite dress I had chosen weeks ago, laid out meticulously on a velvet armchair. It was a masterpiece of French silk, a deep, rich navy that complemented my eyes. Now, it was desecrated. A crude, thick line of brilliant white paint marred the delicate fabric, streaking across the bodice and down one side, completely ruining it. The deliberate nature of it was unmistakable. This wasn't an accident. This was an attack. A small folded piece of paper lay on my pillow. My hands trembled as I picked it up, unfolding it to reveal Chloe's familiar, looping script. "Sorry, Mom," it read. "But Vivienne said it would be better this way. You understand, right?" See? My heart plummeted. Vivienne Sterling, Chloe's future mother-in-law, the architect of this calculated cruelty. No doubt, the S at the end of the note, presumably a clumsy initial for Sterling, or simply Chloe's attempt at solidarity with Vivienne, twisted the knife deeper. My own daughter had been complicit in this monstrous act. A faint murmur of voices drifted from the hallway outside my bedroom. My blood ran cold as I recognized Chloe's hushed tones, then a deeper, more anxious voice that must have been Ethan's. I pressed my ear to the door, my bald head throbbing with a dull ache I hadn't registered until now. "She couldn't look better than your mother," Chloe whispered, her voice laced with a strange mix of defensiveness and justification. "This was the only way, Ethan." Vivienne was adamant. She said she wouldn't have you marrying into a family that didn't understand the importance of presentation. Ethan's reply was too soft to discern, but Chloe continued, her voice gaining a desperate edge. "It's for the best. She wouldn't have listened otherwise. You know how Mom can be, always trying to make a statement." The words hit me like physical blows. My own daughter, my Chloe. She believed this. She had allowed this to happen, to me. Because I couldn't look better than Vivienne Sterling, a woman whose entire existence seemed predicated on ostentatious displays of wealth and carefully curated appearances. The utter, chilling selfishness of it all, wrapped in a thin veneer of concern for presentation. I stumbled towards the bathroom, my head still light, the lingering effects of whatever drug they had given me, making my movements feel clumsy. I stared at my reflection. My face was pale, my eyes wide with shock and a burgeoning fury. But it was the sight of my scalp that truly horrified me. Small nicks, barely perceptible, dotted the smooth skin, some still oozing tiny pinpricks of dried blood. The razor had been sharp, the hand behind it precise, ruthless. I had been drugged, violently, disrespectfully, violated in my own bed while I slept. Helpless, the sheer audacity, the cold-blooded planning, made my stomach churn. They had waited until I was unconscious, vulnerable, to strip me of my dignity, to ensure I would be a grotesque shadow of myself on my daughter's most important day. The goal was clear: humiliation, subjugation, a public declaration of my diminished status. Moments later, a tentative knock sounded at the door. Chloe's voice, now sickly sweet, called out, "Mom, are you awake?" "It's not exactly what you planned, but it'll work. It's one of Vivienne's cast-offs. Patricia found something in her closet that should fit." A cast-off. A hand-me-down from Vivienne Sterling, offered by Patricia, Vivienne's sister, who no doubt saw herself as a purveyor of charity. Another layer of insult, another deliberate attempt to reinforce my newfound, humiliating position. They expected me to accept this, to put on Vivienne's discarded dress, to hide my bald head under a ridiculous hat, and smile brightly for the cameras as my daughter married into a family that had just brutalized me. I stood by the door, my bare feet cold on the wooden floor, the chill on my scalp mirroring the cold rage that was beginning to calcify within me. I took a deep, shuddering breath. Then another. The shock was slowly giving way, replaced by something sharper, clearer, a fierce, protective instinct I hadn't realized I still possessed. My throat felt tight, but I cleared it, surprised when a voice emerged, steady and remarkably calm. "I heard you," I said, my words cutting through the thin wood of the door, aimed directly at Chloe. My voice lacked any trace of the tremor I felt inside, any hint of the pain I had just endured. It was quiet, but firm, carrying an undeniable weight. On the other side of the door, silence. A stunned, pregnant pause. I imagined Chloe's face, pale with surprise, perhaps even a flicker of fear. In that moment, something shifted within me. The Eleanor Vance, who had spent years accommodating, compromising, and often shrinking herself to fit into the lives of others, particularly her daughter, began to recede. A different Eleanor emerged from the ashes of her humiliation. An Eleanor who had once been strong, decisive, unafraid to fight. An Eleanor who had been dormant for too long, lulled into a false sense of security by the very people who now sought to destroy her. No. I would not accept their diminished version of me. I would not cower. I would not wear their cast-offs. The carefully constructed facade of their perfect wedding, built on my suffering, would not stand. Chloe and Vivienne, in their arrogance and cruelty, had made a grave mistake. If Chloe wanted to play games, she was about to learn she'd been underestimating her mother for far too long. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. This was a battle, and I had just found my resolve. The engine of my modest sedan purred softly, a stark contrast to the thumping fury in my chest. I drove, not towards the wedding venue, nor back to the desecrated sanctuary of my bedroom, but to a part of the city I hadn't visited in decades. The streets grew wider, the trees taller and more manicured, the boutiques giving way to imposing, glass-fronted financial towers and discreet, polished facades. This was the luxury district, a world away from the quiet suburban street where I had raised Chloe. From the worn leather of my wallet, I extracted a small, yellowed card, its edges softened by time. On it, an address and a phone number, both carefully preserved for 23 years. My fingers traced the faded ink, the familiar characters, a tangible link to a life I had deliberately buried. Parking the car in a sleek underground garage, I took a moment, clutching the card, to steady my ragged breath. This call, this step, would unravel the careful tapestry I had woven around my life and Chloe's. It was terrifying and exhilarating. I dialed the number, my thumb hesitating over the final digit. It rang twice, then a crisp, professional voice answered. "Caldwell and Associates, how may I help you?" "My name is Eleanor Vance," I stated, the name feeling foreign on my tongue, as if speaking a forgotten language. "I need to speak with Mrs. Caldwell." There was a brief pause, then a soft click as the call was transferred. A moment later, a different voice, older but no less sharp, spoke. "Mrs. Vance? Is that truly you? Eleanor Vance? Arthur Vance's widow?" The recognition was immediate, absolute, a testament to Mrs. Caldwell's extraordinary memory and the significance of my family's name in her world. "Yes, Mrs. Caldwell, it's me." My voice, though still steady, felt thin and reedy. "Good heavens. It's been A very long time. 23 years, if memory serves. I had wondered if you would ever call again. Her tone was a blend of surprise and professional composure. I trust everything is well? Your accounts have been diligently managed, as per your original instructions. Are you ready to access them again? The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Access them again. It meant stepping back into a world of unimaginable wealth, a world I had intentionally renounced for over 2 decades, a world that Chloe, in her ignorance, had just so cruelly turned her back on. A flood of memories washed over me, a vivid, almost painful montage of Arthur. My brilliant, kind, utterly devoted husband, Arthur Vance, whose mind was a steel trap for numbers and opportunities. He hadn't just managed our generational wealth, he had multiplied it exponentially, turning a substantial inheritance into a veritable empire. Properties, stocks, investments in burgeoning industries. Arthur had a Midas touch, an uncanny foresight that guaranteed our family's prosperity for generations to come. We lived a life of quiet luxury, never ostentatious, but always secure, always comfortable. Then, the accident, a sudden, senseless loss that shattered our world. Arthur was gone when Chloe was only 7 years old, leaving me a wealthy widow, adrift in a sea of grief and immense responsibility. The funeral was a blur of hushed condolences and worried whispers. I remembered sitting with Chloe after everyone had left, her small hand clutching mine, her eyes wide and tear-filled. She had overheard fragments of adult conversations about inheritance, about portfolios, about being left alone. "Mommy," Chloe had whispered, her voice barely audible. "Are we poor now?" That innocent question, born of a child's misunderstanding, had been a thunderbolt. It revealed not just Chloe's fear, but a deeper truth about the world, about how easily money could become an obsession, a measure of worth, a source of endless anxiety. I looked at my beautiful, vulnerable daughter, and a profound decision solidified within me. I wouldn't let money define her. Or us. I wouldn't let it become a burden, or a weapon. The very next week, I had called Mrs. Caldwell, Arthur's trusted financial advisor. We met in her discreet office, the same office I was now calling from my car. I laid out my plan with a certainty that surprised even myself. Almost all of our fortune, the vast majority of Arthur's carefully cultivated empire, would be placed into various trusts and long-term investments, managed with the utmost discretion. I would keep only enough to live a comfortable, distinctly middle-class life, enough to raise Chloe without hardship, but without excess. My aim, I had told Mrs. Caldwell, my voice firm despite the ache in my heart, is for Chloe to understand the value of things, not in monetary terms, but in the effort, the character, the integrity it takes to earn them. I want her to measure people by their character rather than their bank accounts. I want her to grow up grounded, resilient, and grateful. For 23 years, I had lived that truth. I became Eleanor Vance, the elementary school teacher. I taught art, nurturing young minds, finding immense satisfaction in the simplicity of creation and the infectious joy of children. Our home was modest, comfortable, filled with love and laughter, if not designer furniture. Chloe attended public schools, learned to budget her allowance, and understood the concept of saving for something she truly wanted. I truly believed I was giving her the greatest gift, a normal, grounded upbringing, free from the corrupting influence of unearned wealth. But the plan, born of love and good intentions, had backfired spectacularly. Instead of learning gratitude, Chloe grew ashamed. Ashamed of our small house, my sensible car, my teacher's salary, ashamed of her friends' sprawling mansions and designer clothes, which she could only admire from afar. She began to lie, inventing stories about our family, claiming a summer house we didn't own, pretending our humble vacations were exotic getaways. She gravitated towards wealthier friends, not for their character, but for their connections, their lifestyles, their seemingly effortless access to everything she coveted. I saw it, of course. The snobbish remarks, the subtle condescension towards anything ordinary. I heard her hushed phone calls, weaving elaborate fictions to impress her peers. My heart ached, but I rationalized it. She was young. She would grow out of it. It was a phase. I thought I was protecting her by not confronting her, by letting her navigate these social waters on her own. In truth, I was enabling her shame, allowing her to cultivate a superficiality that would eventually lead her to sacrifice her own mother for the approval of a woman like Vivienne Sterling. The bald head, the ruined dress. These were the bitter harvest of a seed I had sown with the best of intentions, watered with my silence and misguided hope. Stepping into Mrs. Caldwell's office was like walking into a carefully preserved museum of my past. The rich scent of aged leather and polished wood, the muted tapestry on the wall, the discreet hum of the air conditioning. Nothing had changed. The same antique desk, the same leather-bound books, even the same arrangement of delicate porcelain figures on the mantelpiece. It was as if time had stood still for 2 decades, waiting for my return. Mrs. Caldwell, her silver hair coiled neatly at the nape of her neck, rose with a serene smile, extending a slender hand across her desk. Her eyes, shrewd and knowing, held a warmth I hadn't expected. "Eleanor, please, have a seat." Her voice was soft, calming. I sank into the familiar, deep armchair, feeling a strange mix of comfort and unease. "It's exactly as I remember it," I murmured, my gaze sweeping around the room. "Some things, Mrs. Vance, are best left untouched," she replied, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. She gestured to a slim, leather-bound portfolio, already open on her desk. "I've taken the liberty of preparing a summary. I imagined you wouldn't want to delve into the full, extensive reports just yet." My eyes scanned the elegant script, the precise columns of figures. My breath hitched. The numbers were staggering. Even with my limited financial acumen, I could grasp the magnitude. Grown substantially was an understatement. The wealth Arthur had accumulated, meticulously managed by Mrs. Caldwell and her firm for 23 years, had not merely been maintained. It had multiplied far beyond anything I could have ever conceived. My attempts to live modestly, to teach Chloe the value of self-sufficiency, had inadvertently allowed an unseen fortune to swell into something truly monumental. "The investment portfolio," Mrs. Caldwell explained, her voice clear and precise, "has performed exceptionally well, particularly with the long-term holdings Arthur had so presciently identified. And of course, the real estate portfolio has seen remarkable appreciation. The original family estate in Connecticut, for example, has been meticulously maintained, leased to high-end tenants, and continues to generate a significant income stream. All the properties are in impeccable condition, generating revenue and appreciating steadily. My original family estate, the sprawling Connecticut property with its ivy-covered stone walls, manicured gardens, and endless rooms, a place I hadn't set foot in since Arthur's death, choosing instead to sell it in my mind, to pretend it no longer existed, to fully commit to my simplified life. But it was there, generating wealth, patiently waiting. The irony was almost unbearable. In trying to shield Chloe from entitlement, to force her to understand the value of things, I had inadvertently made them both wealthier than ever, without either of us ever needing to lift a finger. The very thing I had tried to avoid had become an insurmountable mountain of gold, largely unknown and certainly unappreciated by my own daughter. Mrs. Caldwell leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing but gentle. "Eleanor, what exactly do you need today? Beyond the reports, that is." I looked at her, at the woman who had faithfully guarded my secrets and my fortune for 2 decades. The answer came to me, clear and strong, cutting through the fog of regret and resentment. "I need," I said, my voice gaining strength, "to remember who I am." A genuine, soft smile bloomed on Mrs. Caldwell's face, transforming her reserved features. "I think," she said, her eyes twinkling with understanding, "I can help with that." From a sleek drawer in her desk, she produced a slim leather wallet. Inside, a new credit card, black and gleaming, bearing my full name. Next to it, a small stack of elegant, embossed cards. "Letters of introduction," she explained, to a few establishments that might be useful. The best stylists, exclusive boutiques, reputable jewelers, a discreet car service, should you require it. Your old connections, Eleanor, though dormant, are easily reawakened. I took the wallet, the weight of it feeling unfamiliar in my hand. It was a tangible link to a past self, a woman I barely recognized. Thanking Mrs. Caldwell, I rose, feeling a surge of determination. This was it. The first step, back in my sensible sedan, parked once again in the bustling luxury district. I found myself hesitating. Outside, a grand boutique, its display windows showcasing impossibly chic garments, seemed to mock my simple outfit and the baseball cap I wore to hide my bald head. 23 years of living modestly, teaching children, and pinching pennies had changed me. The woman who'd once thought nothing of spending thousands on a dress now felt a prickle of anxiety, a pang of imposter syndrome, at the mere thought of walking into such a high-end store. My hand went to the brim of my cap, a protective gesture. This was ridiculous. This was precisely the mindset I needed to shed. I had the means. I had the right. More importantly, I had a purpose. Chloe and Vivienne had underestimated me. They thought they had stripped me bare, left me powerless. But they had only awakened a sleeping giant. With a deep breath, I opened the car door and stepped out, walking towards the boutique with a newfound, deliberate stride. The world was about to meet the real Eleanor Vance again. The heavy glass door of Isabella Rossi's boutique swung silently inward, ushering me into a world of hushed elegance. Soft lighting illuminated racks of exquisite garments, their fabrics shimmering under the spotlights. A scent of expensive perfume and fresh flowers hung in the air. A tall, impeccably dressed woman with a severe but refined expression, who I presumed was Isabella herself, approached me. Her initial smile was cautious, professional, a silent assessment of my simple jeans, polo shirt, and baseball cap. It was a smile that said, "I'll be polite, but I doubt you're buying anything." I met her gaze evenly, feeling a strange calm descend. This was part of the process. I reached into my new wallet and presented Mrs. Caldwell's embossed card. "Mrs. Caldwell sent me," I stated, my voice clear. "I need a complete outfit for this evening. Something significant, a wedding." Isabella's eyes, which had been scanning my casual attire, now darted to the card, then back to my face. The transformation was immediate, almost theatrical. Her reserved posture softened, her smile became genuinely warm, inviting. "Mrs. Caldwell's recommendation is always of the highest importance," she purred, her tone shifting from polite disinterest to eager deference. "Please, Mrs. Vance, allow me to offer you our full services. We have a private suite perfectly suited for your needs." She led me through a curtained archway into a plush, secluded room, an oasis of mirrors and soft lighting. A young, stylish assistant, Leo, materialized instantly with a tray of sparkling water and small, delicate pastries. "My daughter's wedding," I explained, settling into a velvet armchair. "And I need a complete transformation by this evening." "Something like that," Isabella nodded, her eyes already appraising my frame, her mind clearly working at lightning speed. A complete transformation by this evening for such an important occasion. "Consider it done, Mrs. Vance." She turned to Leo. "Bring out the new arrivals, the silk organzas, the tailored velvets. Something with presence, but not overshadowing." What followed was a symphony of quiet efficiency. Isabella and Leo, moving with practiced grace, presented an array of stunning dresses. Elegant emerald greens, deep sapphire blues, rich burgundies. Each garment was a work of art, a testament to exquisite craftsmanship. They understood my unspoken need for dignity, for power, for beauty that wasn't ostentatious but undeniable. I tried on several, feeling the unfamiliar glide of silk against my skin, the perfect drape of velvet. It was a stark contrast to the paint-ruined gown lying back in my bedroom. As Isabella held up a particularly striking deep amethyst gown, Leo paused, a gentle query in his eyes. "And for your hair, Mrs. Vance? Shall we consider an updo? Perhaps something classic to complement this neckline?" This was it. The moment of truth. With a sigh, I reached up and slowly removed my baseball cap. The cool air touched my bald scalp, and for a fleeting second, I felt exposed, vulnerable. Leo, to his credit, didn't flinch. His expression remained calm, professional, yet a flicker of concern touched his eyes. "Ah," he said softly, after a moment. "I see. In that case, Mrs. Vance, I know just the person, Madame Sylvie. Her artistry with wigs is unparalleled. She will ensure you are simply exquisite." Within the hour, a car service, arranged by Isabella, whisked me to a discreet, unmarked building in another elegant part of the city. Madame Sylvie's salon was an intimate haven, filled with soft music and the delicate scent of 1,000 hair products. Madame Sylvie herself was a vision of serene elegance, her own silver hair swept into an intricate chignon. She greeted me with a knowing smile, no questions asked, as if bald clients were an everyday occurrence. As she gently examined my scalp, her touch surprisingly comforting, I found myself speaking truths I hadn't dared to voice aloud. "I've been invisible for a long time," I confessed, my voice barely a whisper. "Today, someone tried to make sure I stayed that way. They tried to make me disappear. I don't want to be invisible anymore." Madame Sylvie's eyes, kind and ancient, met mine in the mirror. "How long?" she asked, her voice a low, resonant hum. "Since you were seen? Really seen?" I closed my eyes for a moment, the weight of the question settling heavy on my shoulders. Really seen. Not as Chloe's mother, not as the kind elementary school teacher, but as Eleanor Vance, a woman with her own desires, her own presence, her own beauty. 23 years, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. She nodded slowly, understanding evident in her gaze. "Then it is time to be seen again." With a flourish, she turned, pulling a shimmering silk cloth from a pedestal. Beneath it, resting on a velvet cushion, was a wig. But it wasn't just a wig, it was a masterpiece, a cascade of luminous silver blonde strands, perfectly sculpted, exquisitely layered. It seemed to catch the light, radiating an ethereal glow. It wasn't my old hair, but something entirely new, entirely breathtaking. "This," Madame Sylvie announced, her voice filled with quiet pride, "is a work of art. Human hair, sourced from the finest European strands, each one hand-tied, custom blended for a truly natural movement and color. It was commissioned by a woman whose daughter, much like yours, convinced her she didn't deserve to look so beautiful for a special occasion. She never claimed it." There was a subtle emphasis on the last sentence, a shared understanding passing between us. I reached out, my fingers trembling as I touched the impossibly soft hair. "It's magnificent," I breathed. What does something like this cost?" Madame Sylvie's eyes held mine. $53,000. "Mrs. Vance, but its true value lies in what it will give you. It will remind you who you are every time you see yourself." $53,000. An astronomical sum for a wig. For hair. But as I thought of Chloe's casual cruelty, of Vivienne's deliberate malice, of the bald head and the ruined dress, a fierce certainty solidified within me. This wasn't about vanity. It was about reclamation. It was about defiance. It was about being seen. "I'll take it," I declared, my voice firm and unwavering. If you're finding Eleanor's story as captivating as I am, don't miss a single moment of her incredible transformation. Hit that like button, share this with a friend, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. 2 hours later, I stood in Isabella's private suite, bathed in the flattering glow of soft lights, and stared at my reflection. A woman stared back at me, almost entirely unfamiliar. She was elegant, poised, radiant. It wasn't just a physical change. It was as if an internal light had been switched on, illuminating a strength I hadn't realized I possessed, or perhaps had simply forgotten. The wig was perfection. Madame Sylvie's artistry had created a masterpiece. The The silver blonde hair, styled in soft, sophisticated waves, framed my face beautifully, softening my features and enhancing my eyes. It wasn't my old hair, but something new. Something that suited the woman I was becoming. It felt lighter, more vibrant, a crown rather than a disguise. Isabella, with her impeccable taste, had chosen a midnight blue silk dress. It was simple in its lines, but devastatingly effective. The fabric, rich and luxurious, draped exquisitely, clinging in all the right places before flowing to the floor in a graceful sweep. It was a dress that whispered rather than shouted its expense, a testament to true quality and understated glamour. It felt like a second skin, comfortable yet utterly transformative. For jewelry? Isabella asked, presenting a velvet tray of sparkling diamonds and emeralds. Perhaps a delicate sapphire pendant? Or diamond earrings to catch the light? I shook my head gently. No. Thank you, Isabella. I have my own. Reaching into my simple leather purse, the same one I'd carried for years, I retrieved a small, velvet pouch. From it, I carefully unwrapped my grandmother's pearls, a simple, single strand, luminous and timeless, a true family heirloom. I fastened them around my neck, the cool weight a comforting presence against my skin. These pearls, unlike the borrowed finery, represented true value, enduring love, and a legacy that went beyond mere material wealth. As the clasp clicked into place, Isabella's expression softened further, a rare, genuine warmth filling her eyes. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her voice a hushed reverence. "You look magnificent." I studied my reflection again. This wasn't just a pretty woman. This was a confident, elegant woman who commanded attention simply by existing. The lines of worry that had etched themselves around my eyes from years of quiet worry and modest living seemed to have faded, replaced by a spark of resolve. The slight slump in my shoulders, born from years of trying to be inconspicuous, had straightened into a posture of grace and dignity. This was Eleanor Vance, reclaimed. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my clutch, a jarring intrusion into the serene moment. I glanced at the screen. It was Chloe. "Where are you?" The text read, laced with frantic urgency. "The wedding starts in an hour, and you're supposed to be here getting ready. Everyone's asking for you." A ghost of a smile touched my lips. Everyone, meaning Vivienne and her coterie, no doubt. They expected me to be rushing in, flustered, grateful for a discarded dress and a place in the back row. I typed a brief reply, my fingers steady. "I'll be there." My internal resolve hardened. I would be there. Yes. But not as the grateful, diminished mother they expected. I would be there as myself. Isabella, seemingly anticipating my departure, handed me a matching midnight blue silk clutch and a small, antique compact mirror. "Remember this feeling, Mrs. Vance?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine. "Remember how it feels to honor yourself, to be truly seen?" I looked at my reflection in the compact, seeing the confident woman looking back. "I won't forget," I promised, both to her and to myself. Stepping out of the boutique and onto the bustling street, a subtle shift occurred around me. Heads turned, but not with pity or condescension. There was curiosity, respect, admiration. People instinctively made way for me, their gazes lingering with a newfound appreciation. It was a feeling I had forgotten, the quiet power of presence, of being undeniably noticed. For 23 years, I had deliberately faded into the background, choosing invisibility. Now, the world was acknowledging me again, and it felt both strange and deeply satisfying. Just as I reached my car, my phone buzzed again. Another text. This time, from Vivienne Sterling. "Dear Eleanor," it began, dripping with false sincerity, "I hope you understand that everything we did was for the good of the family. We just want Chloe to have the perfect day." I stared at the message, a cold contempt rising within me. For the good of the family. Her family, perhaps. Certainly not mine. She and Chloe had chosen to humiliate me, to strip me of my dignity, all in the name of a superficial ideal. I knew, with absolute certainty, that Vivienne was about to learn that this mother was done sacrificing, done accommodating, done being invisible. With a swift, decisive movement, I deleted the message, erasing her words and her false concern from my phone, just as I intended to erase her influence from my life. The game was on. The country club was abuzz with activity, a symphony of hushed chatter and clinking champagne glasses. As my car pulled up to the grand entrance, I observed the scene with a detached eye. A fleet of luxury cars, gleaming under the late afternoon sun, lined the driveway. Valets, impeccably uniformed, moved with practiced efficiency. Inside, through the soaring glass windows, I could glimpse the lavish decor, towering floral arrangements, crystal chandeliers sparkling like captured starlight, and tables draped in silk and lace. This was Vivienne Sterling's masterpiece, a meticulously orchestrated display of wealth and status, designed to impress and intimidate. Before stepping out, I checked my reflection in the car's rearview mirror one last time. The woman staring back was a stranger, yet intimately familiar. The $53,000 wig, a cloud of luminous silver blonde, caught the light, glowing subtly, framing a face that now held a quiet power. My midnight blue silk dress, a whisper of luxury, draped perfectly. The pearls, my grandmother's legacy, rested cool against my skin. I took a deep breath, the scent of expensive perfume and fresh flowers already reaching me. This wasn't just an entrance. It was a statement. The moment I stepped through the grand oak doors, a hush fell over the immediate vicinity. Conversations rippled, then faded, replaced by a ripple of murmurs. Heads turned, eyes, initially filled with casual curiosity, widened in surprise, then speculation. I walked with a steady, unhurried pace, my gaze sweeping across the room, acknowledging the sudden attention with a calm, almost regal air. A familiar face detached itself from a cluster of guests. Mrs. Davis, an old acquaintance from my social days with Arthur, her expression, a mix of shock and delight, hurried towards me. "Eleanor!" she exclaimed, her voice a little louder than intended. "Good heavens, Eleanor Vance. You look... Wow. I almost didn't recognize you. You look absolutely stunning, darling. What a vision." She embraced me warmly, her surprise palpable. "It's been a long time, Agnes," I replied, a genuine smile gracing my lips. It was strangely comforting to be remembered, to be recognized not as Chloe's mother, the elementary school teacher, but as Eleanor Vance. Before I could continue the conversation, another figure, taller and more imposing, approached. Mr. Harrison, Vivienne Sterling's brother-in-law, a man known for his sharp wit and even sharper business acumen, offered a polite bow. "Mrs. Vance. Remarkable. You look truly remarkable this evening. That dress is exquisite." His eyes, however, held a shrewd glint, assessing not just my appearance but the underlying message it conveyed. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," I replied, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a confidential tone. "I confess, Eleanor, I had heard certain rumors about your circumstances, but clearly they were greatly exaggerated, or, perhaps, have been dramatically altered?" I met his gaze, my smile unwavering. "Oh, circumstances change, Mr. Harrison, sometimes quite dramatically." The double meaning was entirely intentional, a subtle shot across the bow. He seemed to understand, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Over his shoulder, I caught sight of her. Vivienne Sterling. She stood by the grand staircase, radiant in a champagne-colored silk dress, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, a picture of polished, arrogant confidence. She was holding court, surrounded by a deferential group of women, a dazzling smile fixed on her face. But as her gaze swept across the room and landed on me, that smile faltered. Confusion flickered in her eyes, then disbelief, quickly followed by a dawning realization, and finally, a surge of raw panic. The blood drained from her face, leaving her pale and visibly shaken. She broke away from her entourage, her movements stiff, almost robotic, as she began to walk towards me. Her controlled fury was almost palpable. "Eleanor," she said, her voice carefully modulated, betraying only the faintest tremor. "You look—" "Thank you, Vivienne," I responded, my voice calm, almost serene. "You look lovely as well. Champagne suits you." The unspoken comparison to her champagne dress and my midnight blue was not lost on her. Her eyes narrowed imperceptibly. "Your dress," she continued, her gaze raking over my silk gown, searching for a flaw. "It's interesting." The word was stretched, dripping with condescension. A clear attempt to diminish my choice. "It's adequate for the occasion," I replied, my tone neutral, devoid of emotion. Comfortable, dignified. Everything one could wish for in a mother-of-the-bride outfit. Vivienne's jaw tightened. She took a deep breath, clearly struggling to maintain her composure in front of the watchful eyes of her brother-in-law and other guests. "Eleanor, about this morning." Chloe was quite upset. "She was worried you might be upset about the dress situation. She really just wanted everything to be perfect. She was concerned you might not feel comfortable attending." She tried to frame her cruelty as concern, my humiliation as a delicate consideration for my feelings. The audacity was breathtaking. I simply looked at her, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. My voice remained even, cool, cutting through her manufactured concern like a blade. "Comfortable? Vivienne? I assure you, I am perfectly comfortable. In fact, I'm exactly where I belong. At my daughter's wedding." The subtle emphasis on my daughter was not accidental. The message was clear. I was not the humiliated, defeated woman she expected. I was not leaving, and her carefully constructed perfect day was about to become something far less perfect. The crowd parted as Chloe, her face a mask of agitation, rushed towards me. Her wedding dress, a vision of lace and tulle, shimmered around her, but her expression was anything but serene. She was clearly distraught, likely from my earlier text, and continued absence. Her eyes, wide with a blend of relief and frantic worry, landed on me. She stopped short, her mouth falling open in an audible gasp. "Mom!" The single word was a choked sound of disbelief. She struggled for words, her gaze darting from my perfectly styled hair to the exquisite dress, then back to my face, as if trying to reconcile the woman before her with the mother she knew. Where did you get that dress?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "But you said you couldn't afford. What happened to your hair?" Her confusion was genuine, her carefully constructed narrative of her mother's limited means crumbling before her eyes. "Circumstances change, Chloe," I repeated, the same words I had used with Mr. Harrison, my voice calm and even. The ambiguity of the statement hung in the air, unsettling both Chloe and Vivienne, who stood rigid beside us, her face still pale. Vivienne, regaining a semblance of control, stepped forward, her hand grasping Chloe's arm in a possessive gesture. "Eleanor, perhaps we should discuss this later," she interjected, her voice tight with forced pleasantry. "The ceremony is about to begin. We wouldn't want to cause any further delays." Her eyes, however, were blazing with a silent fury. Just then, Ethan, the groom, approached, a look of confusion on his face. "Everything all right here?" he asked, then his eyes landed on me. His expression softened, genuine admiration replacing his concern. "Mrs. Vance, you look amazing. Really different." "Thank you, Ethan," I replied, a warm smile for my son-in-law. I felt like celebrating today. Ethan chuckled, still somewhat bewildered. "Well, you certainly are. You look like a completely different person from this morning." Vivienne's face went from pale to ghostly white. Chloe made a choked sound, her eyes wide with panic. The silence that followed was thick with dread. I met Vivienne's frantic gaze with an innocent, almost childlike query. "This morning? Ethan? What do you mean?" Ethan, oblivious to the undercurrents, shrugged good-naturedly. "Oh, you know, Chloe said you had some kind of incident with your hair and dress. Something about paint and... well, she said you were quite upset." Vivienne clenched her jaw, her nails digging into Chloe's arm. Chloe herself looked like a deer caught in headlights. The truth, veiled by their flimsy excuses, was now out in the open. Even if Ethan hadn't fully grasped its implications, I waved a dismissive hand, a light, almost airy gesture. "Oh, that," I said, a faint smile playing on my lips. "It worked out beautifully, didn't it? Sometimes what seems like a setback is actually an opportunity, a chance to reinvent oneself." The subtle jab landed squarely. The ceremony proceeded, a blur of vows and heartfelt promises. I sat in a seat far removed from the designated family section, a clear snub orchestrated by Vivienne, no doubt. But I didn't mind. From my vantage point, I could observe the subtle shifts in Vivienne's demeanor, her forced smile, the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she kept glancing at me with a mixture of fear and hatred. Chloe, too, seemed distracted, her eyes flickering towards me repeatedly, a shadow of unease clouding her joy. During the cocktail hour, amidst the clinking glasses and convivial chatter, Vivienne finally cornered me by the bar, her smile now a brittle mask. "Eleanor," she began, her voice low and conspiratorial. "About this morning. It was truly an accident, you understand. A dreadful mishap with the paint. So unfortunate." Chloe was beside herself. She was trying to gaslight me, to rewrite the narrative, to absolve herself and Chloe of their deliberate cruelty. I turned to face her fully, my gaze unwavering. "Vivienne," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "let's be clear. What happened this morning was not an accident. It was deliberate cruelty, and we both know it." The color drained from her face again. "For too long," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "I have allowed you and Chloe to diminish me. I'm done lowering my voice. I'm done making myself smaller for your comfort." Her eyes widened, a flicker of genuine fear now replacing her anger. "Eleanor, please. Not here." "You made one critical mistake, Vivienne," I stated, ignoring her plea. "You assumed you knew who I was. You assumed I was meek, easily manipulated, that I would simply accept whatever humiliation you dished out." "Mom!" Chloe's voice, sharp with panic, cut through the air. She had approached, drawn by the intensity of our conversation. "What are you doing? You're making a scene." I turned to my daughter, my heart aching with a complex mix of love and sorrow for the choices she had made. "I'm not making a scene, Chloe. I'm discussing it with the person who orchestrated it, your future mother-in-law." Vivienne looked as if she might faint. The guests nearby had begun to notice the tension, their conversations quieting. "Fine," I said, turning back to Vivienne, a hint of steel in my voice. "We can pause this for now. But," I added, my eyes holding hers in a powerful gaze, "I do think it's time people knew the truth about a few things." As the dinner wound down, the MC announced, "And now, we'd like to invite the mother of the bride, Mrs. Vivienne Sterling, to say a few words." Vivienne, looking utterly rattled, began to make her way towards the microphone. But before she could reach it, I stood up from my distant table. My midnight blue silk dress shimmered, my silver blonde hair a beacon in the room. I walked with purpose, a quiet resolve radiating from me, straight to the microphone stand. I took the mic from the surprised MC, my eyes finding Vivienne's, then Chloe's. "Actually," I said, my voice clear and amplified, commanding the attention of every single guest, "I believe I have a few words to say first. It's time to stop hiding. Time to let people see the whole truth." My voice, amplified by the microphone, carried across the stunned silence of the grand ballroom. The truth, meticulously withheld for 23 years, spilled out. The immense wealth, Arthur's foresight, my deliberate choice to live modestly, and the painful reason behind it all to raise Chloe with integrity, free from the pitfalls of entitlement. As I spoke, the narrative wove from the heartfelt intentions of a grieving mother to the painful realization of how those intentions had been twisted into shame and, ultimately, into the morning's cruel act of humiliation. I didn't spare Vivienne or Chloe their complicity, detailing the bald head, the ruined dress, and their attempts to diminish me. The air crackled with palpable shock, then a wave of murmurs, and finally, as I finished speaking, a thunderous eruption of applause. It wasn't just for me, I realized, but for the universal truth of being underestimated, of fighting for one's dignity. Vivian Sterling, standing by the stage, her face ashen and eyes wide with horror, looked like she was carved from stone. Every ounce of her carefully constructed facade shattered. 6 months later, my life bore little resemblance to the quiet existence I had cultivated for decades. I lived in a beautiful new home, not the sprawling Connecticut estate, but a sophisticated townhouse in a vibrant part of the city, chosen for its elegance and practicality. I had gracefully, unapologetically, reclaimed the life of comfort and quiet luxury that was always mine. My days were filled with purpose, no longer defined by self-imposed scarcity, but by choice and newfound freedom. The truth of my immense wealth, once a closely guarded secret, had spread like wildfire through our social circle. Vivienne, once the queen of her social scene, was utterly humiliated. The whispers, the pointed glances, the sudden chill in her acquaintances' demeanor had forced her into near seclusion. Her grand wedding, meant to elevate her status, had instead become the stage for her public undoing. Chloe's initial reaction had been a whirlwind of panic and anger. "You made me look like a fool, Mom," she had accused, tears streaming down her face, furious that her carefully constructed world of appearances had been demolished. The wedding had indeed been a disaster, overshadowed by my revelation and Vivienne's subsequent public meltdown. The Sterling family, deeply embarrassed by the scandal and the exposure of their matriarch's vindictive nature, had distanced themselves considerably from Vivienne. But over the next 3 months, through difficult, raw, and often tearful conversations, something shifted in Chloe. The anger slowly gave way to understanding, then regret. She finally, truly understood. It wasn't my wealth or my revelation that had made her look like a fool. It was her own shame, her own dishonesty, her relentless pursuit of superficial acceptance that had led her down a path of cruelty and betrayal. One quiet afternoon, Chloe visited me, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. In her arms, a tiny bundle, my granddaughter, Lily, just 3 months old. "Mom," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "I needed to know the truth earlier. Not the money, but everything. I was so ashamed of the wrong things. Of our home, of your car, of the fact that you were just a teacher. And all this time," she gestured vaguely around my elegant living room, "all this was waiting." I reached out, gently stroking Lily's soft head. "The money was never the point, Chloe," I reaffirmed, my voice soft. "It was always about character, about integrity, about knowing your own worth, regardless of external validation." Tears welled in Chloe's eyes. "What I did that morning," she whispered, her voice choked. "To your hair, your dress. It was unforgivable. It was cruel," I corrected gently, "but not unforgivable. Not if you truly learn from it." She looked at me, a profound longing in her gaze. "I want Lily to know her grandmother, the real one. The strong, wise one. Not the one I tried to hide. I want to learn to be the kind of daughter you deserve to have." It was a promise, fragile but heartfelt, a desperate plea for a second chance. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope for us, for our broken connection. A few weeks later, Mrs. Caldwell paid a visit, a stack of crisp legal papers in hand. "The Eleanor Vance Foundation for Women Over 50, she announced with a proud smile, "a resource for women seeking new beginnings, often after unexpected life changes, financial literacy, career counseling, personal development, access to networks, everything to help them reclaim their lives." "Those 23 years of living a modest life," I told Mrs. Caldwell, a thoughtful expression on my face, "taught me a profound lesson. They taught me who would value me for myself, for my heart and my mind, and who would only respect me for my money. It stripped away all the superficiality. Now, I want to use what I have to help other women find that clarity for themselves." The foundation quickly gained traction. My story, once a private humiliation, was now a public testament to resilience and the power of self-reclamation. Emails poured in, often from women facing similar crises of hidden identity and lost self. One, from a 60-year-old divorcee named Janet, resonated deeply. "I, too, feel like I've been invisible for too long," she wrote. "Your story has given me hope." Then, a call I never truly expected. Vivienne. Her voice was strained, devoid of its usual arrogance. She offered a formal, genuine apology for her cruelty, for her judgment, for her attempts to control and diminish me. I accepted it, not because I had forgotten, but because I had moved beyond needing her apology to validate my worth. "Vivienne," I said, my voice firm, "I accept your apology. But let this be a lesson. Treat the next person with respect, not contempt. And if you ever mistreat Chloe again, know that I will not hesitate to hold you accountable. You now know who I am." I sat in my beautiful home, the afternoon sun warming my face, a contented sigh escaping my lips. My dignity had been restored. My relationship with Chloe was mending, slowly but surely, built on a new foundation of honesty and mutual respect. And through the foundation, I was helping other women find their own paths to authenticity and strength. It's never too late, I reflected, looking out at the city skyline, to remember who you are. It's never too late to reclaim your life, and it's never too late to stop making yourself small for other people's comfort.